Hello, I'm Troy Kilpatrick and I'm the Executive Director here for the Journey Museum and Learning Center in Rapid City, South Dakota. Thank you for joining us on a Black Hills journey. Our museum is a huge timeline from billions of years ago all the way to present day. And we strive to tell those stories of everything that the Black Hills in South Dakota has to offer. Today, we're going to look at the history of the Sturgis Rally and Races. This event, it hosts hundreds of thousands of people in a community, Sturgis, South Dakota, that normally has 7,000 people. We're going to look at the history of the Sturgis Rally and Races, how it all began back in 1938 to how it is today, and even have a little bit of a tweak as we look to the future and how the Sturgis Rally and Races will continue today on Black Hills Journey, where the journey continues. So to begin this Black Hills journey, we need to go all the way back to 1938. And as we tell this story, there's going to be a couple themes that are going to stick out to you as you see and hear all of this. And that is South Dakota entrepreneurial spirit, the ability to be innovative and creative. And we're going to begin our story by going back and learning about this gentleman right here, Mr. Pappy Hoyle, who started the Sturgis Rally and Races all the way back in 1938. Some of our storytellers that you're going to get to meet are from the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum, Indian Motorcycles, and the city of Sturgis as we tell the story of Pappy Hoyle and the beginning of the Sturgis Rally and Races all the way back to 1938.
The Indian Motorcycle Sturgis story really starts with Pappy Hoyle.
Pappy Hoyle grew up just outside Sturgis in Van Acker Canyon. His family had an ice business, but was quickly realizing that ice was not going to be needed as more homes had refrigerators in them. And so he needed to figure out a way to sustain himself in the area and doing what he loved to do. He started talking to some of his other friends that were motorcycle enthusiasts and conned one of his buddies into buying an Indian motorcycle because that was the one requirement to being an Indian franchise that he couldn't meet. And so after that happened, then Pappy opened the Indian motorcycle dealership. Pappy
Hoyle was the Indian motorcycle dealer in Sturgis over on Junction so many decades ago.
And one of his ideas was to generate some business in Sturgis, which is a pretty small town, kind of in the middle of nowhere. He decided to send out a letter to invite all of his friends from around the country to come to the Black Hills Motor Classic, which then they would race and probably break down and need some parts, which would help his business.
1938, Pappy and Pearl organize the first races that turns into the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally.
Pearl drafted a letter and sent it out to, I think, about 40 friends across the country. And then in August, they were elated to have about 10, 15 riders, a couple handfuls of riders there. They hosted all of the riders in their backyard and they camped. The local churches came and provided gospel music for entertainment.
They started out in the most humble of ways, Pearl cooking for everybody while everybody's gathering and tenting and having fun and conducting races.
Yeah, I think she had a really big hand in it. She was kind of the behind-the-scenes organizer of it all. She was the communications director as far as sending out the notices and sending out the communications and getting together the entertainment in the early days and then even leading up to the parades.
Who could have believed it was going to become the 80th rally, Sturgis, South Dakota, the mecca of the motorcycle world? Who could have imagined that journey from such humble beginnings? It's amazing.
From the very beginning, the city was involved. You know, a lot of the activities and events, the racing, you know, took place on city property. But yeah, the original organization and all of that really was Pappy.
I know he was certainly involved in the races. He did a lot more of the organizational side of the races and ensuring the safety side of things.
The very first races, this is one of the things that most people don't know. It wasn't flat track. It was a sport called hare scrambles. And we still do that. It would be an early form of motocross. And that was actually held out by Bear Butte. Now, another one of the early events was over at the half mile. It was actually a horse track and also a race car track. And so they raced half-mile events there.
There were 2 years when the rally didn't occur because of the war, and so there were a lot of resources that were depleted, and just it was not even thought of that the races would happen for those 2 years. And so that's why we're short too when you do the math.
So through the years, as the rally continued to occur annually, it continued to create more fans who could not go without coming to Sturgis. The word Sturgis was becoming legendary. And as we move forward and look back in time, we're going to start to look at the events that transpired at almost an epic moment in the Sturgis's 50th anniversary. What happened? What happened from that point going forward? Let's continue our journey through the history of the Sturgis Rally and Races.
The rally started to grow into somewhat of a force in the late 60s, that the city took on a larger and larger role.
But definitely by that point, it had gone way outside of just the two of them managing the entertainment and that sort of thing.
Late 70s, early 80s is where there was the first real transition. I mean, prior to that, there was, tens of thousands of people that would come out all the time.
And then by the 80s, it was such chaos that, that led to the campground.
The city leased out the city park for camping, and that's where a lot of the infamous stories kind of began. And at that point, the city actually provided, of course, security there and leased it out. We do cleaning in that area. We also started a lot of the closing down of Main Street. And at that time, you can hear the long-timers in Sturgis talk about they remember when, the bikes would take up half of one block, and it was a big deal. And, the first year when all of a sudden it was an entire city block. And then as more and more wild activities occurred in the city park, there started to be a lot more discussion about, what is the impact on the city, and does that necessarily make sense? At that point, there was a vote, and the vote was very close on whether or not to even have a rally anymore in the future. And so the city did proceed with the rally, but with that, the city made some significant changes to try to show that we were very mindful of the sensibilities of the locals, and trying to make sure that it was a better environment, at least in the city limits. And so at that point, we did close down the city park to camping.
But when the city park was closed for camping and for coming to Sturgis and hanging out there, that's where there was the expansion of the commercialization of the rally. Campgrounds came up around the area. People said, there's room for you to stay here.
Things kind of heated up the next year or so in town. And so they were looking for someplace else to go, and we were the only place there was at that time. And then this was just a pasture. There was no office, there was no chain link fence, there was no electricity, there was no water, there was grass and cows. And we were, about 3-4 miles out of town, and nice little hillside there for a natural amphitheater. We could have some music, play into the amphitheater, and just, again, not too much more thought went into it than that.
The growth of the campgrounds actually almost became symbiotic, that as the campgrounds became larger, then we were able to have more visitors that would come to downtown during the day and into the evening.
It really became a place where there's a lot of people here, let's keep them here and let's entertain them, and let's, you know, they also want to ride motorcycles, but there's also times when there's downtime and they want to relax.
We instantly got a reputation for being the place to go, you know, in the 80s, right?
But the basis and foundation of it all is the exact same thing that Happy Hoyle and the beginning Jack Pine Gypsies put together is we got a great place to ride motorcycles, let's race them too while we're here, and let's enjoy the beautiful Black Hills.
Harley-Davidson in itself has touched a chord many decades ago in the American psyche. So naturally, when you have a motorcycle event like this, a nationwide one, the predominant make of motorcycle that you're going to see is going to be Harley-Davidson, and so that just makes us a big component of it.
And so people in about 88, 89 were just always telling me, 1990, you don't have a clue what's going to happen to you, right? I said, what do you mean?
And then, of course, 1990 hit.
The 50th really does stand out. And what I remember most was looking up the highway, looking up Interstate I-90 towards Rapid. And not only were they, you know, stacked up coming into town, but it continued all the way up the highway and beyond the hill where you could see.
Shocked at how big could one of these things get. Nobody had a real idea. Sturgis in the 50th was really big. And of course it stressed everything from it, and nobody was ready for it.
You know, 1990 might have been the largest attendance the rally ever had, but nobody was prepared for it. Nobody knew, you know, what to do about it. So, you know, there wasn't anybody counting.
Harley-Davidson and events like this were growing so rapidly and that it was so hard to get in front of it and to be ready for it. So every year was just almost like a deluge of what was going to happen, and you knew you weren't going to be able to keep up. You just didn't know where you would fall down first.
I was sitting in the restaurant in Philtown with the owner of Philtown there at the window at the front, and it's like a few days before the rally, and we'd never seen anything like it. There's just a stream of motorcycles, just motorcycle, just like a school of fish, right? I mean, just motorcycles coming off that freeway onto Junction Avenue there, and I thought, oh my God, so I got to get back to the campground, see what's happening.
What was really kind of unique in that was probably more the 1991 rally, because it was interesting to see how large the 50th was, but when we saw that the 51st rally was not quite as large as the 50th, but almost, and there were still hundreds of thousands of people that came here, then it became obvious that this was a sustainable major event that was going to have a significant commercial impact, you know, for decades to come, and it always has been. So with that, after that, the city became far more involved, because you have to have a significant amount of infrastructure to support hundreds of thousands of people. So whether that's the medical services, the emergency services, traffic control, additional ensuring that the food vendors, as well as the tattoo artists and everyone else, are doing things, you know, safely and in accordance to state regulations. So all of that really started to emerge right after 1990, and especially after 1991.
I do have to say, and I don't credit myself, but credit the people that work here, we've gotten pretty darn good at putting on a rally.
But that's the 75th, I think. What the biggest impact of that was, obviously most of the people, the core of the hub is in Sturgis, but it spreads out in the Black Hills because there are so many wonderful spots. Well, during the 75th, there's so many people, it was just packed everywhere, and that was just they had to go somewhere.
I wanted to be an Indian dealer in Sturgis, and we opened our little store, and we were open in time for the rally in 2014. A question was asked, what of your future? And my answer was kind of blurted out of my mouth. I said, at the end of this rally, we'll be the #1 Indian dealer in the United States, and we will remain so. And that's what it is today.
It's huge in a lot of ways. So the museum here has only been open since 2001, the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum and Hall of Fame. What happens for us, because we're small and because we are the anchor right on the corner of legendary Main and Junction, we get a huge influx of visitors, especially during the big year. So anytime there's a big anniversary year, that's when we see the most number of people in attendance. So that's great, because admissions and our gift shop sales largely is what keeps us open, but it's also a huge impact on our facilities and on our staff, because we are a small nonprofit. We try to work really hard with the staff that we have and not have to bring in a lot of extra folks.
Something that we've changed over the last 10 years is what the rally returns to the city of Sturgis. It's different than it used to be. The city's always been responsible for the cleaning, for the safety, for the barricades, for the traffic control, working with DOT and all those people. Those have costs. Well, in the past, the rally didn't pay for those costs. We've actually changed it. We've reduced our property taxes tremendously. It's down 42% from where it was at the height during the mid-90s. But the bottom line is the citizens of Sturgis used to pay to host the rally. Now the rally pays for itself to host the rally, and we get return for our citizens.
When we do our studies from it, anywhere from 2 to 3% of the state's GDP often comes from the rally. And so knowing that that is such a large economic driver, we know that, of course, it's not all going to happen in a city of 7,000 people. It's going to happen throughout the entire region. It'll happen throughout the Black Hills and also in Sioux Falls and Aberdeen as people are coming here.
We're going to keep getting bigger and better. One of the things that we did do here recently is we bought 17 acres to the south of us, and so we actually border Hog Heaven Campground. And so that's going to allow us to move into doing national type events as far as motocross goes. We already do national events in terms of flat track and hill climb, but motocross is really kind of the thing that everybody wants to do nowadays.
We got 600 acres. We've not ever filled them, right? So I always tell people we still have room for another million. People love big numbers.
Well, from the Harley-Davidson perspective, both Harley-Davidson Manufacturing and Black Hills Harley-Davidson is, I think it's important to know that we have a long history. It's well over 100 years, and sometimes companies can get stodgy and sometimes fall to the wayside if they don't stay current with people's needs, with technology, putting the right product out there for them that meets the needs that they have. I think that the motor company and Black Hills Harley-Davidson, as their representative here in this area, have a real focus on really looking towards the future.
The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally has survived 80 years. And now the big question is, will we see a 100th Sturgis Motorcycle Rally? It's not just up to the people who are coming today. It's not just up to the businesses that are here today. It's going to be up to new people, new technologies, new ideas, some of which we haven't really thought of yet.
Who knows? Whatever it brings, we're going to be part of that, and we always want to be on the cutting edge.
I think that people are going to always want to socialize, and getting together and having something in common is what brings people together to socialize. You start socializing, you make friends, you bond.
Very much the same. I think for me, because I know a lot of folks in the motorcycle industry, it's really about the camaraderie and friendship and being together with folks that from all over the world and all over the country. We have friends everywhere that come to the rally, and so for us, that's really what it's all about, and I can't imagine that changing. I don't know what it would take for people to say, I'm not going to go ride with my very best motorcycle friends for those 5 days or 7 days or 10 days or however long you decide to stay. And I think because of the area, it's just always going to be a draw. I mean, unless something major happens in the Black Hills that makes us all of a sudden ugly with terrible roads, I don't imagine people are going to stop coming.
In the future, the mode of transportation may change, but I think with what we're doing now, there's always going to be two wheels that come out in August, and we're going to welcome them. But my point is, no matter what motorcycle they're on or what vehicle they're on, and whether it's August or June or whenever, the Black Hills are always here, and we always have that to offer. That we have to reach people and show them what we have to offer. Give them an environment, give them a gathering like that was the coolest thing ever. They go back and they tell their friends, and it just exponentially grows. That's what the future is going to hold, is younger people coming and saying, I'm coming back.
Some way, somehow, the City of Sturgis Motorcycle Rally will continue.
Somehow, some way, the Jack Pine Gypsies will continue.
Some way, somehow, Indian Motorcycle Sturgis and the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally will continue.
Somehow, some way, the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum will continue.
Somehow or some way, Black Hills Harley-Davidson is going to ride into the future.
Somehow, some way, the Buffalo Chip is going to continue. And it's easy. It's because of the people.
Somehow, some way, the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally will continue. It's the spirit. It's what's in us and what we have.
Thank you for joining us on our Black Hills journey through the Sturgis Rally and Races, the history of all of this that began in 1938. I hope you've enjoyed all of what you've seen today, and you understand through learning about the history, and you see the independence and the spirit that we have here in South Dakota to get things done, to continue to do things, that you can be assured that whether you come to this year's Sturgis Motorcycle Rally and Races or in the future, that somehow, some way, the journey will continue. So let's talk a little bit about why we're doing this video. Why do we have Black Hills Journeys? Just recently, the American Association of Museums released some startling facts, and that is, here in 2020, with everything that has occurred, 40% of American museums will not reopen. That's a scary number. What's great is that both the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum and the Journey Museum and Learning Center have reopened. The other daunting number, though, is that the American Association of Museums is saying that we could lose 60% of our arts and culture museums throughout the United States through the course of 2020. So this is why we're doing this. We're collaborating to hopefully provide some interest in arts and culture, in inspiration into Black Hills, and quite honestly, support for both of our museums, the Sturgis Motorcycle Museum and the Journey Museum and Learning Center. Thank you for joining us today.